Welcome to episode 66 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts, and today I talked with Alice Ivy, who is a producer, songwriter, and artist working out of Melbourne, Australia. In this episode, we discussed outsourcing the work that you are not 100% confident in to other awesome, talented people, how to make your session run as smoothly as possible, as well as why she tries to get a song to 80% as quickly as possible in a songwriting session. If you would like to support the podcast, you can share it around in a conversation or on your social media. Rating us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts really helps too. Make sure you are following or subscribed on all of the social media platforms so you can stay up to date with everything new in the world of What's That Sound. If you got value out of this podcast, you can help us by buying a t-shirt on our merch store or donating to the podcast. If you would like to request a guest or make a suggestion, you can email me. The link to that and everything else, all of my stuff, all of Alice Ivy's stuff is in the show notes, so you can access it all directly there. With all that aside, let's get into it. Episode 66 of What's That Sound podcast featuring Alice Ivy. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode. And today I am here with Alice Ivy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And, you know, you're pretty well known around Australia, but if anyone doesn't know who you are, give us a bit of an intro into what you do in the industry.
All right. Where to begin with that? Wow. My name's Alice Ivy. I am a Melbourne, NAM-based producer artist. I would say I definitely live in both worlds, more so now. I grew up in Geelong, moved to Melbourne, started an artist project, and that was called Alice Ivy. And I guess I 8 years into my career, signed a couple of record deals, signed a publishing deal, put out 3 albums, and done a lot of things, as being an artist in those years. So like touring heaps, I've done like most festivals in Australia, done a lot of international touring, and kind of like lived the life of as an artist. And then I would say maybe after the release of my second album, a lot of other artists and bands started hitting me up to produce their records. So I kind of stepped back into not back, I would say, that's not a step back. I would say sidestepped into more writing and producing for other artists and such. So that's been really cool, kind of living in both worlds. So like a lot of records. I've got a beautiful studio in Northcote, and a lot of artists come through, and I've done stuff with Mallrat, Busika, a lot of US artists. I don't know. I've even done a session, like I've done stuff with Tina Arena. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like talking about, what producers do. I feel like it's like, you kind of just like get into the studio and you do your thing, and it's a new day every day. So, it's kind of hard to talk about like, pin like my favorite things that I've done. But I guess I'm involved in both worlds. And then alongside of that, I also, I do a lot of DJing, and I also I'm on the board for MPEG, which is really cool. So I don't know if I don't know if you've spoken about MPEG on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had Anna on as well a couple of times.
Oh, amazing. Sorry. I didn't know that.
You're all good.
So I'm heavily involved in MPEG, which is amazing. I am very passionate about producer and engineers' rights, and I feel like producers and engineers generally get the short end of the stick always, and they're the last ones to get paid. So I'm very passionate about trying to like create change in some kind of foundation in this wild west of an industry that we work in.
Yeah. Oh, look,
Um,
I agree, and obviously that's why I do the podcast, because I really want to spotlight the amazing work of all of the cool people in our industry doing what we do. And yeah, we'll definitely unpack a lot of that stuff that you just discussed. But I do want to take it back to the early days. Where'd music come into your life, and was it kicking around your house a lot and things like that?
yeah, I grew up in a house where my parents were pretty much always just like playing music in the background. Um, I wouldn't say, I mean, they do play, my mum plays piano and she used to sing a little bit, but I generally think like at a young age, like most of my music influence came from my grandma who, so my whole family's German. So my whole family's back in Germany, and my grandma, like, grew up like singing in choirs and would always play piano and stuff like that. And I learnt my first guitar chords at her house in Germany and stuff like that. So I guess I have to thank my grandma for that. But then growing up in Australia, my parents would always just have, Pink Floyd, Supertramp, Queen, all that. They went through a massive Santana phase. Like they went through a massive Gregorian Masters of Chant phase. I don't know if that's like I feel like that's becoming. I don't know if like the listeners know what that is. Surely you know what that is.
Ah,
It's like
surely.
90s. It's like 90s like electronic beats with like chanting over the top.
Yeah.
So like they went through a phase of that, which I feel like every like parent set of parents went through in the 90s.
So funny.
And then yeah, like we grew up like going to a lot of festivals. I grew up down the surf coast here, so I went to Queenscliff Music Festival a lot. I went to Port Fairy Folk Festival a lot, and yeah, mum and dad would always drag us to shows, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then when I got into school, I picked up a guitar and I started doing guitar lessons. And there was this really great music program at my school where it was like I went to an all girls school, and essentially there was this band that did like Motown soul covers. So I auditioned to get into that and then started playing guitar in that band. And it was really cool because it was like, it was in school hours, but then like the band would go on tour and stuff like that.
Oh,
So like
wow.
we did like Montreux Jazz Festival and Paretta Soul Festival in Europe. And that was pretty mad just because I was like a 15-year-old, like,
Yeah, that's
like
so
going to these
unusual.
festivals. And yeah, I remember when I was like 16, like playing Montreux jazz festival and going to Mark Ronson's showcase where he
Whoa.
pulled out like Chic and all this stuff, and Herbie Hancock's show. And yeah, so I guess I kind of like was like always, that was pretty amazing and an amazing experience. And I alongside of that, I was also like I had a lot of friends that I'd collaborate with, and we started bands and we're doing like the opening slots at festivals like Queenscliff and stuff like that. And we're kind of doing small shows around the place. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where I came from. And
Mm.
it's also like reflecting on those times too. It's interesting sort of thinking about how much those have streamlined to where I am now. Like collaboration was always the key. It's a key core part of my artist project. But then back then too, I was doing it a lot too. Like
Mm.
I would never would have thought that I would be a solo artist project. But yeah, back in the day, like I'd be working with you know, other singers and stuff like that to help like write a song and collaborate on stuff. Like I wasn't really always just in my bedroom doing everything by myself. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, you dove straight in, really. Like you just got in there and just started seeing things and started doing things. And that's so cool to be exposed to like that side of live music and things like that in your formative years. That's huge. Do you remember like, were you being highly analytical about stuff, or were you just kind of like living it up?
No, I think I was kind of living it up and experiencing as much as I could. I'd always say yes to everything. And yeah, I guess, there's a really special, there's just something really special when you don't. you're not necessarily, you have a career in music. It's like you're just making music for fun. And that was, that's something that I just always did back then. And I try to stick with that now, but obviously it's a different world you live in if you work full time, as a producer and artist in music. So I guess at the time I was just exactly what you said, just trying to live it up and enjoy every moment.
Absolutely. And obviously you would have had, to be able to do those sorts of things, you would have had people around you that were, I guess, mentors or just, helping you get into that world, performing lots and, being around people. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I guess probably one of my biggest mentors. It's also worth mentioning that, like, at this point in my life, when I was a teenager, I didn't really know what producing or engineering was. I didn't really have any intentions of doing any of that. Like, I just assumed that, like, a producer was someone, I had studio experience, but I assumed that a producer was someone that would just you as a band would just go into the studio with someone and they would record you and that was it, which obviously I feel like the definition of a producer has changed, but I didn't really have any intentions of doing that. And so back in the day, I just remember, being really heavily involved in songwriting and just playing guitar in the band and being in the background and kind of, particularly with this band too, like there was like a horn section and like a rhythm section. And so I kind of feel like I was like really interested in and understanding. And I felt like I was good at trying to make sure all the pieces work together, just from, whether that was like leading the band or like writing parts or whatever. And I had this one, the guy that actually ran the program, his name was Ross Lipson, sadly passed away from cancer when I was 17. But he started that band, and I remember when I auditioned, he was really encouraging. And also one thing that I found really cool about him was that he was always trying to work ways of just like breaking through and doing things a little different. Like, like he'd be like, he'd have it wasn't just, when you think of like a school band, it's kind of like a little, I don't know, maybe like a little cheesy, I guess. I don't want to talk down on school band vibes, but it's like, I don't know, like band camp vibes, like it's
Yeah.
really nerdy and all this stuff. But this band in particular, like Ross was amazing in leading it, and he did so many things he was always thinking ahead. Like, for example, like, instead of like a straight Motown cover, he'd be like, let's do a dub cover of this song, which is so cool.
Yeah,
And like, I
absolutely.
remember there was one point where I remember there was one point where he was like, oh, we should get like a DJ or a scratcher or something on stage too. And I was like, damn, that's so like interesting. And
Yeah.
and he was kind of thinking of like routing the audio from stage through this mixer and like doing all this stuff. And I was like, I don't know, like I feel like
It's like,
that's
why are you
pretty
working at a
amazing.
school, dude? Like, you
Yeah,
sound way
like
too
I was like,
advanced.
that's I know, totally. And he would always just push you and in a very kind and supportive way. But then also, I had so much respect for him growing up. Like his word was kind of God. So he really pushed my boundaries he really helped me kind of get better as an artist and also understand what it's like playing in a band. Like, for example, like particularly with that kind of style of music, you've got so many parts working together. Like if you listen to like, Marvin Gaye, what's going on? It's like, there's like strings, there's horns, there's a bass, there's James Jamison playing bass, there's like, drums, like the Funk Brothers doing the rhythm section, and every part is like complex in its own way, but just works together like a puzzle. And I
Yeah.
guess I really learnt how to I really tried, like he really opened the door for me in understanding how that kind of music works. And I feel like that definitely has influenced the way I produce music, the kind of music I produce, and also the way I think about producing
Mm.
music. Um, yeah, so Ross Lipson was definitely from a young age like that guy that really sort of encouraged and provided an amazing opportunity for me. And essentially, I wouldn't be here without him for sure.
That's awesome. And I feel like you need those sorts of people when you're younger to show you a path, or just like a light, shine a light on what is possible. Because when you're young, you're just so closed off and you have no real idea about the way things work. So for someone to show you that there's things possible, like that would have been like, and you wouldn't have known it at the time, but it would have just been something that you like probably took with you for years and years and up until today, I'm guessing as well.
Totally. And I also just want to say too, like, the whole band was female. And, he also provided opportunities for people that weren't, that didn't necessarily play an instrument, but like we'd have like this incredible sound, like front of house tech that would come with us. And he like even organized for her to have like assistants so they could learn, live engineering and what that entails. And yeah, I just think like, those kind of opportunities are just so rare and awesome, especially at that age. And it's just so forward thinking and cool. And yeah.
Totally. That's so sick. And I guess then moving into how long between, that sort of time and then you discovering that you wanted to do your own stuff and learning production and things like that. What sort of time frame was that?
So I would say I started producing when I was about like properly, I would say when I say like, I mean, what is, the definition of producing? I mean, when I say I had Ableton and I could confidently make a song in my bedroom and put it to SoundCloud, like I reckon I was probably like maybe like, yeah, like 22, 23. After school, I did the music industry course at RMIT, which is good. It was good. It kind of provided, again, like, I don't mean to like diss educational programs, but, I think the good thing about like the course was that it sort of provided a foundation for me to like leap off. And then, the tricky thing about like doing a course is that, if you get the certificate at the end of your time, it doesn't necessarily equate to a job in music.
I think it rarely does.
Totally. Cool. Glad we're on the same page.
I went to NMIT and did the music industry skills course there.
Yeah.
So we probably were covering a lot of the same ground. And yeah, I've said it before, but I think the best thing about an educational, like, arrangement, I guess, is that you've got other people around you that hopefully are passionate too. And I think it just provides this ground of like excitement that when you're learning similar things at a similar time in a similar part of your life, it's really exciting and it gives you a drive. But also you're meeting people and you're being around people that love music, and that's so cool.
Totally hit the nail on the head there, Stu. Like, very grateful for my time at uni. But again, I think it was more so the kind of people that I met at uni, and also the time and the bubble that we were living in that is that's the most I got out of it, to be honest. So when I went to uni, it was actually so funny, like reflecting on it. We had the King Gizzard guys were in the year above me. We had Northeast Party House in the year level. Actually, I don't know if you've heard of Way Dynamic. He's having like a really big moment right now. Dylan, he's one of my old buddies from uni, and like cool. We used to play in like bands together, and he's like absolutely blowing up right now.
Sick.
My best friend Hazel Gordon works at one of my best friends Hazel Gordon works at Concord, and she's my A&R. You know, like it's kind of just like really, really awesome that we had this like network. But essentially when I got to uni, like stepping back into what we were just talking about, like stepping into uni, I had no idea what music production was. I mean, I had delved into GarageBand. I'd done like some little bits of recording, but nothing really too deep. I'd done, I'd messed around with the loops on GarageBand, etc., had fun with that. But when I got to uni, we were introduced to Ableton Live. I actually remember, I don't know if you've heard of like Lucy Blomkamp, who's also
Yeah.
like a total legend, like was sitting, I remember Hazel was in the class and I remember Lucy was sitting like a few seats over. And I remember like, like I was just like thinking on that, like Lucy is obviously such a talented producer and leagues ahead than anyone. And I remember just like opening Ableton Live for the first time with like Lucy just like hanging out in the back,
Yeah,
just like,
yeah, yeah.
this is how you open it, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's so
That's
funny
sick.
reflecting on that. But yeah, so like we got introduced to Ableton and I actually hated it. I was like, this is so annoying. Like all the inbuilt sounds are really lame. Like I can't get this going. I can't make this sound good. And then another lecturer was like, gave us an assignment of sampling. So like taking records and making your own, you know, composition out of samples. So like, and obviously the songs didn't come out. So it was kind of just like an exercise. So like I came home and I was like, you know, sampling like Marvin Gaye records and like taking that like Amy Winehouse, like Mark Ronson, like recording like drum and then like, you know, chopping up some like Marvin Gaye horns over the top of that and then just like putting some guitar over the top. And it kind of really inspired me. And I was so excited about this because obviously you're using, I mean, it's kind of like a low-key splice vibe, but totally
Yeah.
illegal and you can't put the
Yeah.
music out. But it was
Yeah.
like using audio that is incredibly recorded and sounds awesome and already vibey and then, you know, making it yours. And like that really inspired me because I wasn't stuck behind the wall of, gosh, like this sounds dreadful. Like the mix is awful. I can't make these sounds sound good. And so I kind of ended up spending a lot of time in my room at uni just making beats and um, I remember my friends like lent me like an Akai APC 40 and was like, you should try and like turn it into a performance. And I was kind of doing that and spending a lot of time doing that. And I really loved that. Meanwhile, I was still trying to like work on some band projects. So
Right.
I had like a couple of band projects that I was playing guitar in, but they never really worked out just because it was just so hard getting everyone in the room. And that's like the hardest thing. Like I would love the idea of playing in a band, but I think the hardest thing is like for me was trying to coordinate everyone to be in the same room at the same time. And then we're here to ride and also like you know, other people have priorities, which is totally fair. So that was
Yeah.
always really hard. And I guess like what really inspired me well, actually, it's so funny. Like, it's all within the family. Like, Hazel's sister Frankie had a night at uni where she was like, I think she studied architecture or something, and they had like an events night, and one of their bands pulled out, and they were like, Annika, do you want to do like a beat set? And I was like, okay. And I kind of just like learned this performance on my Akai APC 40, and they were like, you need a band name so we can put your name on the poster. Like, what's your name? And I was like, I don't know, like Alice Ivy, like whatever. It's
Love
fine, you
it. The
know.
origin story. We love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I locked that in and it went really well. And I started doing this thing like where I was just like hitting up bands that were coming through and just asking if they needed openers. And I would do that. Like I would open for them at like Northcote Social Club. I was also hitting up like all the venues, but mainly just cold calling managers, so jumping onto like a band's Facebook, finding their management contact, emailing them and asking if they need an opener for Melbourne.
Yep.
And I did that and then I uploaded my first music onto Triple J Unearthed and that kind of started to like get some radio play. Yeah, so I think like what was really interesting was I kind of just realized that, you know, I've been so heavily reliant on band members to contribute things, you know, like, oh, I need my drummer, I need that person to play bass. And I kind of just realized that I could just selfishly do it all by myself in my bedroom without having to ask, you know, like having to rely on other people. But then if I want to outsource things, you know, I wasn't really a confident singer back then. I would just be like, can I just get my friend to like sing on this and then we'll put it out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I kind of self-discovered this and I realized that it was such an empowering and incredible position to be in just because it's like the world is yours.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to sort of, you know, like, I mean, you should probably listen to, you know, advice and stuff, but I was like, I don't have to listen to like a bunch of people that disagree with that. Like, I can just do my own thing and not
Yeah.
worry about the pressure of having to please a band or something. Um,
Well, I love it.
Yeah.
And do you know what? It shows me how strong your intuition is, because what you've just laid out really is the roadmap for getting started in a music career as an artist. Like, you've literally just laid out most of the steps of the things that are important to do to kind of get your name out there and working alongside people. And it shows your intuition, and it shows, you know, how much you favor collaboration. And I do want to unpack that. Like, you know, you've already kind of told us some of the strengths of what collaboration does, but these days especially, what are the things that I suppose that you can highlight to younger people that might be just getting started about collaboration?
Totally. I think one thing that I just want to also touch on is especially as a producer, I think the biggest thing I learned is that it's really cool to outsource the things that you can't do 100%. And there is no shame in that. For example, when I first started producing, I was adamant that I had to the whole thing I had to do myself. Like, I had to play every single note on that record so that I can prove myself as a producer, and I'm the sole producer on the track. And I feel like it's so cool to kind of be in a position to be like, oh man, like I have this song that I love, and there's a really sick bass line on in this, but I really want to send it to, you know, like Nick Mofshin in the States, who like plays bass in Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. You know, he's like part of the Dap Kings because that is his instrument and he is the GOAT, you know?
Yeah.
And then being able to make that work, like, I'm not going to use those Spice samples for those drums. Like, I'm going to reach out to Sean Hutchinson, who's the drummer of Bleachers, who actually makes Splice packs, but like he does remote drumming. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I kind of feel like it's really cool. It's like you want to, you know, it's like your ego is kind of, I think the hardest thing and the best thing that you can do is to not let your ego get in the way of finishing a tremendous record. But particularly with the collaborating thing on, you know, I guess the foundation of my artist project, Alice Ivy, is collaborating with so many artists and being able to do that. And I think there's something so special in the art of collaboration and sharing a moment with someone in the studio. And I think the thing that drives me the most, I mean, I spend a lot of time alone in the studio as well. And for me, I feel like I just get so much done if I have someone in the room feeding that energy. And you learn so much. Like, I feel like I've learned and become the person that I am due to collaboration, because I've just, you know, I've gone into so many sessions, and I've finally, you know, it's taken a long time to kind of feel confident in sessions too. But you go into a room with a stranger, and that sounds like an extremely daunting process, but you know, you might walk out of that room and it completely changes your life. You know, like, I've done sessions with artists overseas who I would consider like my closest friends now, because we met one day, we went into the studio, we wrote an incredible song, and it wasn't just the song, but it was just also the friendship out of that. But then also, like, when you go in with a stranger, like, they're putting their best songwriting skills on the table and you're putting your best songwriting skills on the table. So it's just a mix of everything, and it, you know, it can like pull between each direction and somehow you just create something magical. And I just think that's just so amazing. You know, like, I would say, oh gosh, I mean, Kevin Parker is like, he's like the guy that like does everything by himself in the studio, you know what I mean? And that's like amazing. But I just wonder, like, I feel like I'm not that person. I feel like the only way I can get better, and the only way that, you know, the best way that you can get better at your craft is by learning from other people and experiencing that in the studio.
Yeah. And it's not only like that what you've said is huge. Absolutely. It's like the big thing. The other thing is the inspiration that you get from it is like seeing other people be amazing at stuff is so inspiring. And I do want to like quickly touch on what you said about like when I think the ego, I think in our brains, we always have, it's just a human thing where we expect something to go a specific way. It's just like something that we do where we're like, even if it's like creating a song, we're like, this song is going to go this way. But the beauty of collaboration is we only have our own experience from life, from listening to whatever music we listen to. And even if other people listen to the same genre of music, they get something out of it completely different because they're a different person, they have different ears, whatever. And it just draws new things, and you bounce off, and it's like it's exponential rather than, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 4 because it just kind of it explodes. So yeah.
And also, how boring would life be if you went into the studio and you were expecting something and it happened the same way that you expected every time? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I love. Like, I kind of almost thrive off, like, you know, I mean, I feel like I do a lot of genres. Like, I wouldn't say, a lot of people as a producer, reflecting on myself as a producer, a lot of people assume that I just work in electronic music because one of my artist projects is electronic. I actually thrive on, I mean, I don't know, like, you know, if you listen to the music that I've produced for other artists, like, that's not the case. And I actually thrive in, like, working on guitar music and, you know, like, heavier stuff like that, because I don't know, I grew up playing guitar and I love that kind of music and I love listening to that kind of music. And I just think it's really amazing and cool being able to, like, live across several genres and experience different things. And I feel like the only way I kind of got to doing that is by just doing so many sessions with so many different artists and learning from that. And also, I mean, strictly from a producer's sake too, especially when I was, you know, like, especially when you're doing, like, sessions with other producers, you know, it's amazing. Like, also stepping back, like, sitting in on mix sessions and such, like, how much you can learn from other producers and how many, you know, like, I always, like, write a list of notes of, like, plugins people are using and, like, getting around. And I just think, you know, the best way to move forward is by learning from other people, and collaboration is, like, the key part of that.
Yeah, and I just thought of, like, you mentioning that, like, some people's skill is a guitar, right? Like, and they might have a specific type of way that they play. They might choose certain notes over others. They might bend a guitar a specific way and it has this sound, or it might be the type of guitar that they choose. Whereas, you know, if you liken that to a mixer, they might use the plugin that heaps of people use, but they use it in their own specific way. And it's just seeing all those little things that unlock such a big picture, and you can just try it out in yours, and it might not work, and that's totally cool too. But like, you're just seeing more, and it's so beautiful and so fun. It's like playing video games. I always talk about, like, it's kind of like playing video games. It's just like you're pressing buttons, you're unlocking new levels, you're facing new bosses. I don't know.
I love that. I also, that kind of, like, makes me think. I think the one thing that makes me really thrive in the studio is the unknown. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be on co-writing and experience that collaboration process. But, you know, I've got this beautiful studio in Northcote. I share with a lovely, lovely producer called Pip Norman, who's an absolute legend. And we've kind of set the studio up so, like, everything is super streamlined, and you can run, like, you can run audio through, like, a whole bunch of, like, pedals. And I love the feeling of, you know, going into the studio and creating something, like, that no one else can remake, you know, and experiencing making something, and just, you know, it comes out of nowhere. I think there's no expectations, you know. You're, like, for example, like, you know, I love when I first go into the studio, like, sometimes every time I go into the studio, I try and make something in the first half an hour, like, completely, you know, fresh, like, just to kind of get the gears working. So I'll go in for, like, half an hour earlier and just, like, make a beat. And it doesn't have to be, it could be, like, 30 seconds. It can be, like, 8 bars, whatever. As long as it's, like, something that I'm like, this is sick. And, you know, sometimes I'll generally start, like, just, like, playing some chords on the Juno, and then I'll run that through, like, all my Chase Bliss stuff, and then create a sample, and then resample that and make that into something. And just kind of using the unknown, and using, what I love about that is that, like, you have no idea what kind of thing you're going to make, but you're just getting inspired by these sounds. And I feel like that is a real drive for me in the studio, kind of working with the unknown and not having expectations, and just really enjoying that process.
Yeah, it's so fun. And I think, hearkening back to what we were saying before about our ego and wanting to do everything ourselves, when you kind of close yourself off from experiencing stuff like that, seeing the way that other people set up their stuff. You know, if someone was to work with you for the first time and they had never seen that, you know, set up with like the pedal chains and all that sort of stuff, like they'd be like, oh, and if they were closed off to it, they'd be like, it's not really how I work. I don't know if this is going to work. But on the opposite side, if you, like you said, if you're just open to going with it and seeing how it goes, you'll just unlock all these new things.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point to touch on. I think when you, especially if you're starting out, I think I experience this a lot with young artists actually. Like I kind of go into the room with like a lot of developing artists and, you know, like labels will hit me up to kind of help develop their artists and like make their first EPs and such. I think the biggest thing, like obviously, you know, you don't want to, you know, not necessarily, you know, I'm not saying that going into the studio with an artist, as an artist and listening to the producer and the producer's word is God. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to say is, I think as an artist going into sessions, the best thing that you can do is be completely open and not let the little things get in the way of the songwriting process. So, like, you know, you don't want to, if an artist is like picked the wrong, oh, sorry, if a producer has picked the wrong snare, like you don't want to get super hung up on like the snare being the thing that is holding back the songwriting process. I also just want to make a point that like, obviously we've come a long way in being able to, you know, I feel like it's so I mean, I think it's a lot easier now than what it was a few years ago to be able to, for anyone to just be able to make a song. You know what I mean? But is it a good song or not? I feel like a lot of emphasis, obviously, music production is extremely important and can also shape the song. But I think going in as an artist and not super focusing on it being the correct, you know, like production choice for that moment is the best thing that you can do because it just allows you to experience a fluid songwriting. In my mind, like I love that where it's like you go in and it's like you have 8 hours and you just smash it out. And then, you know, you don't get caught up on like all the little bits and like the little sounds. You just focus on the songwriting and the just like the general vibe. And then you can go back and obviously
Totally.
tweak those tiny things, you know? So
Yep.
I think, yeah, as an artist, like just being open, trying, like, again, do the same method every time. Particularly for me as a producer artist, it kind of gets boring, but the best experiences that I've had are just like making magic from the unknown and learning something along the way. That's the best thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge. I love it. It's so cool. I guess then, like, you know, what does a generic? Yeah, it's not going to be. There's no such thing as generic, I guess, when you're talking about songwriting or like the process. But I guess if you had a standard process that resonates with you, what does a standard songwriting process look like to you?
Oh gosh, that is, yeah. I mean, that changes a lot. I mean, when I'm working as a producer writer with artists, like that does change a lot. But generally, the way I gravitate towards songwriting is just creating a little vibe first on the production. So, like, say it's like, you know, especially, and these kind of draw from those like half an hour loops that I was telling you. Like, I have a folder full of hundreds and hundreds of like idea starters. I call them idea starters, whether it's, you know, it'll just be like, it could be a loop of just like this weird Juno thing that's been run through the pedals and it's like this like sampley kind of thing. It can be drums, bass, and guitar. It can be like synth and drums. It can be like a vocal chop or something. Generally, I like to kind of start like by creating a little vibe like that. And then I am a melody person. So
Yeah.
generally I'll start to like sing melodies over the top and they can just be total garbage, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
you know, I'm singing about nothing. Like, one thing that I've found, you know, like I actually think that this is, for me, the best way that I feel more comfortable in the studio. It's just like, it doesn't have to be the perfect thing that comes out of your mouth first. Like
Yeah.
you kind of mold it into something and it reshapes into something along the way. I have you ever seen the Beatles documentary on Apple Music?
The which one? There's a few.
Oh, on Apple TV.
Oh, on
Sorry,
Apple
on Apple
TV.
TV. Sorry.
I probably have. I love the Beatles and I've watched most of their stuff, so it's
There's
probably
this like 5 hour documentary.
Oh, the
that
one
was
where they're in the
released.
studio.
Yeah, that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so good.
I can't remember what it's called,
Yeah, I
but
know.
it's
Anyway.
so interesting watching that because, I feel like they kind of in some circumstances worked in the same way. You listen to like Paul and John singing over the top of like
Yeah.
this like beat thing, and it's like turns out to be like one of the biggest
Let it
Beatle hits
be.
of all
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But it's like it sounds like absolute gibberish, and like
Yeah.
it's so funny how like what like how loose it sounds, and they're singing about like they're just like kind of doing like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I kind of feel like I love that. And that's also really inspiring because like I feel like a lot of people are shy. When you the first idea, I feel like the most important thing that you can do is like constantly come up with ideas instead of like, I mean, fair, like everyone has their process, but instead of just being like silent and not saying anything and waiting
Mm,
for the
mm,
perfect idea, I feel like the best way for me is exerting all this energy, putting a whole bunch of ideas down, and then finding the right thing and then
mm,
shaping that. So for me,
mm,
like
mm,
I'll flesh this loop out. I'll sing a whole bunch of melodies over the top. I'll be like, oh, that's cool. Like, and then I'll flesh that out into lyrics, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
I have like notes and like that I draw like inspiration from, but generally it's more about like I'm not like Phoebe Bridges where like I, have like the
Mold
perfect
this. Yeah.
song idea and I
Mhm.
have all the lyrics down already. Yeah, I'm just guessing Phoebe Bridges works
Yeah.
like that, by the way. I
Yeah.
actually don't know. I
All
just
folk
like it kind
artists
of,
do it that way.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like, or like, like Adrian Lenker or something like from Big Thief, like where it's like the most poetic, incredible lyricism of all time. Like,
Yeah.
I have worked with artists like that, and it's so amazing. It's actually
Mm,
amazing how rare that is, to be
mm.
honest. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't really happen a lot, but when I do go in with those artists, it's like very special. I'm not that kind of artist.
Mm.
I'll kind of like shape melodies into words and into themes that I've kind of thought about, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then how do you know like what feels right? How do you know what is a good, melody, for example, or lyric? Like where does it say, yep, that's the one?
It's just a feeling. It's just a
Yeah.
gut feeling. I wish
Yeah.
there was an answer to that. I think for me, it's just like an internal feeling, adrenaline rush that I get when I listen
Yeah.
to something that really locks and
By
is
the way,
really
I knew that
special.
was a
Like it's
difficult
like,
question.
you know, yeah. I wish there was an answer to it. I mean, yeah, I kind of feel like for me, it's like, I mean, I get that, especially it's so funny. It doesn't really happen as enthusiastically if it's just me in the studio by
Mm,
myself doing it. But like, say I'm working with like, I remember when I was in the studio with Morat doing the song Horses, which
mhm,
was the closer on our last record. When we tracked that song at like 1 a.m., we were kind of
mm,
we did a day, we worked on a song, and then we started another idea, and then we recorded this song really late.
mm,
And I kind of feel like it just you get goosebumps. You kind of just like I remember when she started singing like those verses, I just remember feeling I get this internal like adrenaline rush and I get really
mm,
excited and I actually get goosebumps. And
mm,
I feel like that feeling again is enhanced because it's someone else's
Yeah,
input.
yeah.
Whilst like if I were in the studio and I was by myself doing that, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool. I think this is cool, and then I'll usually give it a couple of days and I'll go back and then I'll listen again. And then it's like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, let's pursue this, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think I'm like you where I always love, I mean, I do songwrite by myself, but I always love to write with other people because of that reason. And I've actually got a video of like one of my old bands where we're writing in a room and we come up with this like bridge thing where it just builds and builds and builds. And we all somehow, you know, how sometimes you just intuitively connect and you all do the right thing at the same time.
Yeah.
We all like throw the instruments down. We all jump out of our chairs and shit. We're like, ah, it's amazing.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's so cool when
That's
that happens.
like
I can
the best.
totally relate. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the best feeling when that happens.
Yeah.
And it's also crazy how fast it can happen too. I remember like on my last record, a lot of the songs were done within 3 hours.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's
Yeah.
all you need. And it's just, especially if you're working, like I was really fortunate enough to be, I was in the States just after COVID and, finally we were able to travel again. And I was just in different rooms and like the caliber of artists that I've been able to get into the room with is like actually like for me completely mind blowing. I went into a session with Maya Hawthorne, who I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
Back reeling it back to when I was a 16-year-old doing soul Motown covers. Like Maya Hawthorne's like a massive hero to me, and being able
cool.
to jump in the studio and just like get that stuff down, and all the vocals that you hear are like his first takes. And I just think when it locks like that, when you're all on the same page and it just gets done so quickly, isn't that just wild how like 3 hours of crunch time in the studio doesn't really feel like crunch time because it's so fluid and awesome and energetic and fun. And then, a song can completely change your life. I just think, those moments are so special.
Well, I don't think that we should be like putting pressure on ourselves to do things in any specific time frame. Like a song's going to happen the way a song happens, but I think the aim should be to get a song, whether it's just a skeleton or, a demo, the aim should absolutely be to get the song done as quickly as possible. And I think relating back to what you said when you're producing, like, don't worry about the snare sound, don't worry about this, don't worry about that. Get the song in its form as early as possible because, and I heard this from John Mayer talking on the Tetragrammaton podcast. He said, you'll never feel the immediate like emotional attachment to that song the same way as the first time that you write it. And that stuck with me so much. And I think that's it's just huge. Like, and it's exactly what you're saying. Like those moments that you can get a song done real quick, they'll usually be the ones that like feel right.
Totally. Yeah, I kind of, again, when I talk about this process, it's only sort of really gotten to a point where I'm like 10 years into my career, so like and I'm not saying that that's always the correct process of, doing something quickly. But for me, the way I work, I don't mean to like, put pressure. Everyone has their own ways and like respect, but I think for me, my motto is I go into the studio and I want the song at 80% done. It is so difficult going back and it's so difficult going back in on a song, especially if you're working with other collaborators and other vocalists as well. Like, first of all, there's the admin side where you have to try and track them down and be like, hey, bro, like, can I have those stems?
Can we finish that or not?
Can we finish that song? Like, and especially if you're working with artists of that caliber, you only have a day to do it. And then it's like you might not get that opportunity again, which is a lot of pressure, right? And, obviously we do it for the love. We don't want to like be under too much pressure, but sometimes the pressure is good because it's like you go in, for me, I'm like, I want a song to 80%. So when I say 80%, like I kind of want like the vocals pretty much there on the first day. Yeah. I pretty much want the production feeling awesome. I don't want to go back and have to like, I don't necessarily want to go back and have to like change a whole bunch of stuff because it's so difficult to do that. but also as an, I think space is always good too, right? Like, I think one amazing thing is just to kind of be like, I mean, for me, I'm always working. I never really have time off, to be honest. Like, I'm always writing and I've got so many projects always going on. I think it's good to just like, for me, I love just going to the States or like having a writing block out and just being like, smash it out, get all the songs to like an 80% spot and then have a little bit of time away and then revisit and be like, oh my God, that song is so dope. Like, yes, this is happening. This is happening. This is happening. Yeah, for me, that's the way I like to do it because that also, gives you the opportunity to just be able to like crunch and get a whole bunch of songs together and really sort of like experience and get the most of those days and that time that you have with those artists. And then you walk away and you have space and then you go, because sometimes also it's so funny how like you can get caught up in a song, like space is good, but you can get caught up in a song and you're just like, you're constantly going at it. And then like you go back and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? You know what I mean? So, sometimes space is good. But for me, I kind of don't really, I like to get a song to 80% on day one.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I can relate to that. Absolutely. Now we've been talking about the stuff that we like, that we enjoy, that we feel good about, and that makes us, driven and stuff. But I guess I want to, hear your perspective on, you've done some pretty wild things, sharing stages with people like Billie Eilish and Foster the People. And, like you already mentioned, all the people that you've collaborated in the studio with and stuff like that. What are some of the things about the music industry that you may have expected but actually completely different? If you could kind of shed some light on us that may have not experienced that sort of stuff.
Yeah, gosh, where to start? I mean, it's there are so many highs and so many lows of working in this industry. Like, you just never really know. I think the hardest thing that I've sort of become immune to, and this is actually quite a sad thing, really, when I talk about it, is that like you can't ever really, for me, I think I've got this really big shield around me now because I've been doing this for 10 years, but you can't really look forward to anything until it's happening.
Yeah.
This industry is so cutthroat and there are so many highs and there are so many lows. Like, the amount of times where I've been hit up to do like dream tours and it's like you're in the, like you as an artist, you're in the talks for like being main support of this tour. Like, can you put the dates on hold? We're negotiating with the promoter and you're like, cool, okay, I'm going to put the dates in my calendar. I'm going to secretly like really hope this happens because this would be the most amazing opportunity ever. And then it like doesn't happen. Like, they're like, oh, they decided to actually go with someone local, sorry, and it's like, okay, no worries. Sync world. I think in sync, so like I'm fortunate enough that I've like I've gotten like a few syncs over the years, which is pretty amazing. I think, one of the biggest ones that I got was an Apple sync in 2020 for a song called In My Mind. And in that process too, it was like you can't really look forward to anything until you have a signed, like an agreement. During that time, it was lockdown. I remember getting a call from my manager who I hadn't seen in months, and he was like, you're going to want to sit down. There are talks that Apple are interested in your song, In My Mind. It's, like, this is huge, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just letting you know, but you can't think about it and you can't lok forward to it because
so
there's also like two other people
at the same time.
Yeah. There's like there's like two other artists that are in the running for this thing. Like, just be really careful or careful, like don't get your hopes up too much.
Yeah.
Or it will be like, yeah, like this, this ad really wants this brand really wants to use your song. And then they'll be like, oh, actually we went for like someone to do a cover of this song. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you're constantly just like there are so many things that are happening. And you just got to be like, cool. Like the biggest thing that I've learned is to never really get your hopes up. This is quite sad, but never really get your hopes up until it actually happens. And also just continuously keep outputting. Like, don't bank on one thing working. I think it's like you got to just continuously keep busy and keep yourself like sorted and never really get your hopes up too much over one thing. And then you sweet, if that makes sense. Like, that's kind of
Yeah.
one survival technique that I've learned. Another thing is also, it's kind of crazy how you never really know what you're doing in 8 months, like, or like 6 months or 3 months, like my calendar's booked, but I'm like, okay, I could be in the US. I want to say
Yeah.
yes to this. I want to say yes to this session, but I also don't really want to commit because there's a chance that I might be going to the US during this time, but I'm still waiting for that to come through. So I'm not really sure whether that's happening. So it's just like you need to plan, but you can't, if that makes
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
which is really stressful, especially if you have like family who are like, we really want you to come to this show or like this like family dinner in 2 months' time on a Thursday night. Do you reckon you could make it? And it's like, I don't know, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
which is also unhealthy because you kind of do want to put boundaries to your calendar as well, like for your own sanity. So, there's those things. The other thing that I think, I think one of the biggest things that really drives me into, being involved with MPEG and, all the work that Anna Laverty does, who's an absolute legend and
Shout out.
paving the way for so many of us, is just, again, it's kind of wild how as a producer and as a producer writer in particular, right? Like I'm not talking about like, yeah, I'm talking about engineering and such too, but I feel like all of the roles have kind of merged into one more so these days. So, like me as a producer writer, it is the expectation that, I produce, I co-write with the artist, I coach them through the vocals and vocal delivery and do all that stuff, and then provide a really great demo so the label can be like, yeah, we're going to take this on and we're going to finish it, right? A lot of that kind of writing culture, and this doesn't just strictly sit with just producers, like this is also like writers, right? a lot of the a lot of the industry is just based on writing and doing this kind of work on spec. So, there's the expectation and that's, something that's pretty common around the world where, you as a writer producer kind of front it's like an artist like wants to do a session and you as the artist writer, sorry, you as the producer writer provide the studio space, you write the song with them and, you as a producer don't want to just like write a song. It's like you want to produce the crap out of the song and make it awesome and make the demo mix sound pretty much finished. So then the label goes, yeah, we want to put this song out. We're going to pay you. There's this like, there's this
It's
whole
backwards. It's
writing.
backwards. Yeah.
It's backwards.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm starting to change in my own work, and like that's something that like MPEG and such, like organizations like that have been formed in order to kind of create some kind of framework in working like that. But the industry essentially, I mean, it's the same as like people consuming music. Like it's all just for free. Like music is almost not worth anything to people because they pay a very small subscription fee and have access to like every song in the world and they listen to it and that's it, whilst like a lot of this stuff works on spec. And so I feel like that's a really tough thing because you can kind of go into the studio and you can have the best time ever with this artist. Like, like you're fronting the studio, you're doing a day and you create a song and then you get that song to that 80% mark that I was talking about and you feel like you vibed with that artist and you had a good time. And then the artist is like, cool, send me a bounce. And you're like, absolutely. And then the next day you wake up and you go in and you kind of like edit, like you go in for another mix because like usually it's kind of like I kind of like to sit on, like an 80% kind of song for a day, and then you go
Yep.
in and then, you sleep on it, and then you send it the next day and it's all good. And it's like you have the most experience, best experience ever, and that artist is like awesome and you vibe. And then the song never comes out. Like that's like, it's kind of wild how many songs exist out on people's hard drives and they never see the light of day. And they could be the most incredible songs ever. And they're just stuck. And I just think that's incredibly sad and disheartening. And one thing that I've sort of really, I think that's a really tough thing for me, like kind of getting, it's like, oh my God, this song is so good. Like, how is this not out? Like it deserves to see the light of day. One thing that I've sort of started to do to kind of work through that is, like I kind of like every time you go into the studio, there's at least one thing that you can take away that you can like either like take away as like I learned this or like you could use. So for example, like a lot of the sessions that I've done like over the years, recently I went through all the songs on my hard drives and I kind of picked out songs that I was like, man, this is again listening with fresh ears. This is awesome. We should do something with this. I'll like pick the best bits, like say it's the chorus, and I'll like, like take that and I'll turn it into a sample, or I'll like speed it up and then ship it out to like dance producers and see if they want to use it. They're
Awesome.
like that way you're still getting a publishing cut, and like the other writer and the other artist that you wrote the song with is like also getting something out of it as well.
You're hedging your bets.
And it's also
I
like,
love it.
yeah, and also like, it could also just be strictly production, which you as the producer, like you own the master. Like if you were to go in and like you write a for an artist and you love it and you love the vibe, it's like, cool, take the drum and remake it into something else. You know what I mean? Like not everything, if a song doesn't see the light of day, you shouldn't just entirely just let it live in the graveyard of songs that exists. It's like, think about like things that you can take and reuse because, I mean, it happens, especially like when you're working closely with a publisher and they're always looking for like, they're always got briefs and they're looking for songs for, certain spots. It's, using the ideas that you have is easier on you. And it also kind of gives life to a song that's been sitting dusty on a hard drive somewhere.
Well, you're juicing the lemon. It's such good advice. I've never even thought of it that way, but I really really love it. I guess when we're starting to wrap it up, but I guess I want to hear, where you're at right now. What continues to like excite, but also surprise you about what you do?
Oh gosh. I'm good. This year's been kind of wild already, to be honest, where we're like already in February. Um, this year I have been producing and working with an artist on I think her fourth record maybe, which is really exciting. Been deep in album land. Like it's kind of a full length project, which is really awesome. Like I've actually started the year doing a lot of full length projects.
That's the
also
dream.
working with another artist. I know. So I've been working with Annie Hamilton in her latest record, which is really exciting. I've been working a bit with Holly Hebe, who's like
Nice,
doing really cool things.
She's killing it, yeah.
Which is really amazing. Kind of working on her EP at the moment. This year I've also been on tour with Amine for Alice Ivy. So like I was on tour like a couple of weeks ago. And then I sort of have my own projects that I'm working on as well. So I kind of feel like it's been it's been so busy this year, and it's kind of wild how sometimes you look at the calendar and you're like, cool, I don't have anything in March right now. And then it's like 2 days later, it's just completely full. So I kind of feel like right now I am dipping between both my artist project and being, putting my producer writer hat on and being involved in full length projects more so than last year was a lot of was a lot of like day sessions, like going in
Hmm.
every day with an artist and doing that stuff. But this year
Hmm.
has been more so focusing on like bodies of work, which is really, really
Beautiful.
cool and kind of the
Yeah.
dream, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I think so.
Um, yeah, and yeah, so I guess for me, like this year is already kind of pretty busy because of that.
Yeah.
What was the other question? Sorry.
It was like what continues to excite and surprise you?
I think what continues to excite and surprise me working in this industry is how every day there's just something different.
Mm.
Every day is different. Every day you experience something different. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, sometimes you're like, oh my God, like, I don't have anything in the calendar in 6 months'
Mm.
time. And then a day later, it just, some opportunity happens and
Yeah.
then, you're booked out. I think for me, what I love about the industry is that for me, it's not a 9 to 5. It's not really, I try to have routines, but, every day is kind of different, even though I try and stick to,
Yeah.
like my day-to-day routines, but every day is different. I meet different people every day. I learn things every day. And it's kind of amazing how much music you can make
Mm.
when you think about it. And it could really just be one song that completely changes your life. Completely
Mm.
changes your life. It could just be like, and that song could happen in 3 hours. It could happen in like 2 days, could happen in a week.
Mm.
But that's kind of how I like to think of it. I don't like to like put all my eggs in one basket. I like to really just experience as much as possible.
Yeah.
And it kind of continues to surprise me that it just keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously, I hope it does continue for you and all of us, I guess. But last question I like to ask all of my guests is your best snippet of advice, quick advice, first of all, for producers, producers slash engineer types, and then secondly for artists.
Ooh. Um, oh gosh. Okay. I mean, I think one thing, okay, this is
Love it.
probably a
Let's get
really
nerdy.
nerdy quest like thing, and it's kind of basic to be honest. But I think the one thing that I think could really is that could be such a bummer if you can't get it right in a session is technology. And so my advice to producers, engineers is if you have the ability and you have a session, just rock up a bit earlier so you can make sure, like your interface is working, that the mic chain is feeling okay, and just get everything set up so when you're with the artist and you're in the session, you don't have to think about the like signal flow or the engineering aspect as much
Mm.
because that can get in the way of like a session feeling fluid. So like whenever I work with an artist and then an artist comes through, like I always rock up an hour early to the studio, make sure everything's good. I mean, like especially if you're working with like we use a lot of outboard gear in the studio and patch bays sometimes
Mhm.
aren't your best friend. Like
Mm.
sometimes you're like, why does this compressor feel weird? And it's like because like the patch bay is acting up.
Mm.
I always rock up. I always make sure all my signal flow is good. I always make sure all the mics are ready to go. If I know that I have an artist coming through who's like from pop world, like sometimes I'll set up a couple of mic options and then I'll do a quick before they jump on to do their vocals, I'll do a shootout just to be like
Mm.
which mic seems better, and I'll play that back to the artist and I'll let them decide too because it kind of gives them the feeling of empowerment and kind of
Mm.
helps them understand their vocal a little bit more, which I think is really cool. Obviously, not everyone has the ability to do that because like, like maybe it's just the one mic you have in that studio, but I think also just what I'm trying to say is like just making sure you're prepped before the
Mm.
artist comes in, just because sometimes those kind of things can get in the way. Also, even just stuff like tuning guitars. Like, I
Mm.
know it sounds basic, but like just making sure everything kind of feels good and you're comfortable and that none of that kind of stuff that can easily be like done beforehand gets in the way of your
Mm.
writing and production process in the session. Um, yeah, that's kind of like the nerdy thing for me, the nerdy advice to
Love
producers
it.
and engineers. I guess for an artist, oh my God, I think the one that, look, there's like a lot of, obviously some people might find this kind of advice contradictory, but I think there's a lot of emphasis these days on artists being focusing on like social media and marketing and all that sort of stuff. And the artistry kind of loses is becomes lost in the mix a little bit. And I just
Mm,
think as an artist, the best thing that you can do is get better at your craft and
mm,
be awesome at your craft, because that way you have an everlasting career and it's not just held up in numbers, you know? So it's, as an artist, the best thing that you can do is to do as many sessions as possible and experience what working with different people is like, because you learn so much from that and you also grow as a person. And also just get better at your craft. Like if you're a singer, like understand your voice. And then that
mm,
way, and understand like the way you like it being recorded and why you like it being recorded like that. Listen to like, have like a sort of aim or a reference. And I guess that kind of makes your life easier as an artist, being able to convey and
mm,
work with different like collaborators down the track.
mm,
I also think just be open to things. That's the other thing,
mm,
obviously we're all proud and you're an artist for your own reasons and you have a vision that's awesome, but also being slightly open to things is what helps you grow and
mm.
learn from other people. So yeah, we did touch on this earlier, but just be open to trying different things and not get caught up in the snare sound.
Yeah, love it. This has been so awesome. I'm so grateful for you. Taking some time out and spending time with me today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh my God, of course. Thanks so much for having me. It was so much fun.
You're very welcome, and thanks to all of you for checking this out. If you made it this long, really, really appreciate you. Thank you for checking this out, taking the time out, and if you could share it in a comment, on a DM, on a conversation, if people are still having those in person these days. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.